Hi, folks. My name is Marcus Brazil, and I'm from Sooner Safer Happier. We're excited to share this talk on objectives and key results by Jeff Gothelf, recorded at our SSH Americas meetup. Jeff is a global thought leader on product management and OKRs, and his latest book, Who Does What by How Much, is a great way to get started on OKRs. What I really like about Jeff's talk is how he simplifies what good OKRs look like and how they can generate outcomes in your organization. So without further ado, please enjoy this talk by Jeff on OKRs, and please sign up for more great events like this one.
I'm going to talk about objectives and key results. I'm going to talk about it in the context of this question that you're going to hear a lot, who does what by how much, which, as John mentioned, not coincidentally, is the name of our new book. Josh and I are writing this third book together, and it's about objectives and key results. And this is how we teach it. And so you'll hear me kind of bring this up again and again and again. About that. And then I'll talk for about 30, maybe 32 minutes or so, and we'll do as much Q&A as time allows us to do. Okay. I think we're capturing questions in the chat. So if you want to put your questions in there, if I see it come through the chat and it's kind of makes sense while I'm speaking to address it, I will. If not, we'll save them all to the end and we'll answer the questions there. Okay. So with that, February 22nd, 2020, 4 years ago, almost to the day. This was us. That's me, and those are my daughters. We were at a Barca game, not far from here, just down the road, with 100,000 people. Now, Camp Nou, the Barca stadium, is being torn down and rebuilt. But if you've ever been there, you know that you sat there like this. Part of the reason they're rebuilding it is because the seats were really small, and there's 100,000 people, and it's a game, and and look how beautiful the weather was with short sleeve shirts in February, and we're screaming at the top of our lungs, and everyone's having the best time and thinking that everything was awesome and that nothing was going to change dramatically in any meaningful way. We were having a lot of fun that day. My family was in town from out of the country. We had plans to travel together. I had work plans and travels and adventures planned with friends and family, and nothing was going to change. And a month later, literally even less, actually less than a month later, this was life. And I know you all remember this. I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but literally the transformation within 4 weeks or less was from 100,000 people shouting at the top of our lungs in Barca, fully expecting a very predictable future to play out, to living our lives like this, chatting with my buddies, on Zoom, wishing my parents a happy anniversary, on video chat, etc. And it really kind of brought home this conversation that I've been having for a long time, and this idea that we are constantly guessing, which is a really uncomfortable way to think about living life. I think a lot of folks like to live with certainty. I make plans and I like to know where I'm going and what I'm doing. But the reality is that we can't predict the future, sadly, and that we can only make the best guesses right now based on what we know right now. Right? We can make decisions based on what we know right now. When we were at that Barca game, we knew exactly what was going to happen based on the information we had at the moment. A month later, everything was different. And while this is true in life, it's true at work as well. This idea that, we're essentially guessing. Like, we don't like to use that word at work. We like to use words like requirement and roadmaps and things like that. But in reality, we are making guesses, the best possible guesses that we can make based on what we know right now about what problem to solve, how to solve it, how to design it, how to implement it, what people will do with it, and how we will define success. Now, the good thing about that reality, especially when it comes to product development, is that the speed with which we can find out whether or not our guesses were right or wrong has reduced dramatically. I started my career designing software for these CDs. So if you're anywhere in North America, which I think many of you are, or in the UK or France or Germany, and you were receiving mail in the late 90s and early 2000s, you got one of these, at least several of these CDs, and I'm sorry about that. I had something to do with that. I designed the software that went on that, and it would take us months at least, really, and sometimes a year to find out if our guesses were right or wrong. Did we choose the right feature sets? Did we label them correctly? Did we design them well? Did it actually work? Because, we had to send these CDs out and hope that people installed it and paid us money. And the feedback loop was years. And the amazing thing is that the time to learn if our guesses are right or wrong today has shortened dramatically. Dramatically. I mean, this is a screenshot or a screen grab from Gene Kim's book, The Phoenix Project, and it just talks about like how frequently the tech giants of the world deploy to production, right? So you're looking at Amazon at 23,000 times a day, Google at 5,500 times a day, Netflix at 500 times a day, et cetera, right? So every one of those, whereas at AOL we deployed once every 6 months on a CD, right? Today we've got, the deployment of features has become a non-event. It's something that we can, if we choose to do it, we can do as quickly as we want. And every single time we do it, every time we put something out into the world, something small, it's a learning opportunity. It's an opportunity to find out if the guesses that we made were right or wrong, right? Because we can't predict the future. The faster that feedback loop is, the faster we can learn whether or not we actually made a good decision. So we've got technology and infrastructure to help us to do that. In addition to that, we've got methods and tools to help us leverage that technology and leverage that reality, and even more so reduce the risk of guessing incorrectly and wasting effort. And the names of all these tools, right? Agile, design thinking, and lean thinking, product model, product teams, empowered teams, lean UX, DevOps, like all of these methods and tools that on top of the infrastructure that we've got at our disposal, should we choose to use it and deploy it, really should help reduce the risk of guessing incorrectly or mitigating the risk of guessing incorrectly. And yet there is one practice that continuously gets in the way and slows down our success. It really hamstrings our ability to learn quickly and adjust course quickly and pivot towards a better decision. And that practice that slows us down, and it exists literally everywhere, is managing the outputs, right? I've been doing this work now, in this capacity for 15 years, and it is universal. Every company that I work with struggles to get out of the business of managing to outputs now, right? Because it's really easy to say, make me a thing, right? And I know what that thing should look like, and I know what it should do. I know exactly what features it should have, and I know it's going to work, right? Make me a thing, go build that thing, right? When in reality, what we're actually trying to do, right, is we're trying to solve a problem. And there are infinite ways, there's an infinite number of combinations for us, combinations of in our world, code, copy, design, et cetera, but in any situation, to solve a particular problem. Like, do we really think that a traffic light might solve this problem? And the reality is that these are two fundamentally different conversations. The one where we focus on output removes the benefit of our learning capabilities today, the tools, the technology, the methods that we have in place, when instead we need to be focusing on the outcomes, the behavior changes that we'd like to see happen in the world, the problems that we'd like to solve. Now, look, it's not all bad news for managing the outputs. There are situations where it does make sense, right? If you work in a situation of high certainty and low risk, where you know exactly what the end product is going to look like, you know what it will cost, you know what goes into it, and you have a fairly solid guess about what people will do with it when you have it, when you give it to them, right? You've got a fairly high level of certainty that this is exactly how they're going to use it. In those situations, right? Managing the output makes sense, right? There's not a whole lot of risk. There's a lot of certainty. Let's just map it out, chop it up into steps, and finish it out and ship it, right? And that's great in those situations. But as I mentioned before, the world that we live in is unpredictable. And if we continue to try to manage to output to this very kind of prescriptive, predictive, rigid planning, we can't be agile, right? We can't inspect and adapt. We can't sense and respond because the world will continue to throw unexpected challenges and surprises and obstacles, and it's going to break our plans. And depending on how flexible, how agile your organization is, will determine how well you can react to that. All we can do right now, right, is build our guesses based on the things that we know right now. And if we're lucky, we know at least these four things right now in most situations. We know what people need to do in the systems that we're building. So we have a sense of what people are trying to do in the system. Hopefully, we have a sense of what they're actually doing in the system. So we're measuring that, right? How are they actually behaving in the system? Um, if we're lucky and we get to talk to them on a regular basis, we know why they're doing that. And we know what we need to be successful as a business. We have a good sense of what we need. And we can start to base our guesses about what to do based on the things that we actually know right now. What we don't know, despite our level of experience and expertise, is how to solve our user needs and trying to predict what products or features or solutions make sense now runs the risk of being wrong or ridiculous in the future when we actually build it. It's too much risk, it's untested assumptions, and it's unnecessary. We don't need to work this way. And yet, when we manage to output, we end up with products like this all the time. Instead, we want to move towards human-centric goals, right? Moving away from focusing on delivering a thing, on making an output, and instead solving real problems for real humans in a way that is meaningful to them. And that's where OKRs come in. OKRs, if done well, start to move an organization away from managing to output and towards managing to outcomes. This is a definition that I've pulled out of our manuscript as we continue to edit it. But the short of it is that OKRs is a goal-setting framework for teams that defines a qualitative goal, right? The inspiration or the aspiration, and it measures success towards that goal by achieving specific outcomes. What are people doing differently, right? Instead of measuring the completion of tasks or the production of a product or features or a service along those lines. Now, if we're going to solve human-centric problems, there's a foundational principle in our book that we think is invaluable for literally everyone to understand. And it's the idea that everyone has a customer. Now, if you work in a B2C world, this is an obvious statement to you. Of course, you have a customer, right? It's the end consumer, the person who buys the thing from you or uses your app or uses your service on an ongoing basis. But there are lots of situations where this idea that everyone has a customer isn't exactly obvious, right? If you're building a procurement system for third-party vendors, your customers are third-party vendors. If you work in B2B, the people who buy and use your products, those are your customers. If you make systems that are consumed by other colleagues inside your organization, you build a analytics product for your company or APIs or a platform or whatever it is, right? Your internal colleagues are your customers, right? Whatever we make at work, some human consumes that thing, and that human is your customer. And our job is to understand that human, to understand what problems we're trying to solve for them, and then to set success in terms of behavior change in those humans. The idea is, well, how do we get them to be more successful in the system? And that is ultimately our goal as we try to set our success criteria in terms of human-centric behavior. But there's a problem with managing the outcomes and managing to humans, is that humans are complex and unpredictable, and they will do weird stuff that sometimes feels inexplicable. So even if we get to a point where we have a sense of what they're doing, we don't know why they're doing it. And on top of that, even if we get a sense of what we'd like them to do, if we take too long, that behavior that we're targeting isn't static and it begins to emerge through the use of our products because people rarely use our tools for what we expect them to do, right? You could build a social network to try to connect with your high school friends. And the next thing you know, it's being used to subvert elections and spread hate all over the world, right? We don't know what people are going to do with our product. And so, in order to set human-centric goals, we accept this idea that everyone has a customer, a human that consumes the thing that we make, and we start to ask the question, well, if we solve the problem, how will we know? Well, we'll know by understanding who does what by how much. Right? That's the key question. And that really it really helps us get to an outcome when we're setting our goals, right? An outcome is a measurable change in human behavior that drives business results. And perhaps unsurprisingly, you're going to find all three parts of that question in this definition, right? Who's the human that's taking the action? What is that action? Right? What is the behavior? And by how much is it changing, right? And the way that you know that you've set an outcome centric goal is you're literally able to answer this question: who does what by how much? That's how you know that we've started to move away from managing the output to managing to outcomes. Now, there's tremendous benefit here, right? Because if you can deploy to production 23,000 times a day, right? And you can, right? Amazon does it, so it's possible. You don't have to, right? But even 500 times a day, or once an hour, or once a day, or even once a week, um, you can optimize a product forever. You can work on it forever. You're building these continuous systems. How do you know that you've delivered anything of value? Well, if we can say who does what by how much, if we have an outcome, outcomes tell us that we've actually delivered something of value because people are now behaving differently. And it's at that point that we can actually say, oh, well, actually, outcomes tell us when we're done. Because if we can work on a thing forever and we can optimize it forever, well, how do we know when to move on? When people have changed their behavior enough, and we get to decide how much is enough in this particular case, right? And so I want to, that's sort of like the philosophical setup. I want to get really specific about writing OKRs and what they should look like in my very strong opinion, which I'm willing to debate with you. But let's take a look at this. Let's break it up between objectives and key results. Um, Objectives. These are the goals for our team. They are qualitative. They are aspirational and inspirational. This is why we get out of bed every day, right? Why do we come to work every day? They're action oriented. They provide value. They support the higher purpose of the organization, and they're time bound. We're going to hear a lot of superlatives, right? In a good objective statement, the simplest, the most compelling, the most efficient, the best, right? Things of those types, right? I want to ask you a quick question in the chat uh, for a second. There are two, in my opinion, things that are very obviously missing from this list of descriptive words for a good objective statement. What's missing from this list? Two very big things that are missing from this list that you would typically find in a goal statement. You want to drop it in the chat? I see. How from Jacqueline? Correct. How? Like, in other words, there's no description of what we're going to build exactly. And then from a couple of other folks, the measures, the numbers, the quant missing from the objective statement. Exactly. There's no features in your objective statement, and there are no metrics in your objective statement. All of that is not here by design. We don't want this in here. This is a qualitative statement. And the way that we arrive at this qualitative statement is we start with the problem that we are trying to solve, right? So, what is the business problem that your team is tackling in the next cycle or cycles, and sprints, quarters, whatever cycle makes sense to you, right? What are you trying to solve for? Why is it a problem? What do you know about the root cause of the issue today? Let me show you an example. Okay. Here's an example. This is completely hypothetical. Me, run a continuing education learning platform for lawyers. We've noticed that customers sign up for the service, take one class, and then leave. And when they leave, they tell us that our user experience is bad, and that's why they're not coming back. And this is bad for us because that drives up our acquisition costs, sales costs, and reduces profit. So that's the problem that we are going to tackle. It's the most important problem for us to tackle as an organization in the next cycle. What we're going to do is we're going to turn that problem into a positive statement. If you solve the problem, not how, remember, right? Not how will you solve the problem, but if you solve the problem, what does that look like? Well, it could look like this, right? Build an engaging continuing education product for the entirety of a lawyer's career by the end of the year, right? It's one way to turn that problem into a positive statement. And what I've done here is I've actually written my objective for this. It's qualitative, right? Engaging, whatever that means, right? It's inspirational and aspirational. We want to create an engaging product for the entirety of a lawyer's career. It's why we get out of bed every day. It's action oriented. It provides clear value. This is the business that we're in, and it's time bound. I'd like to get there by the end of this calendar year. Now, once you've got your objective, it's important to check the level of it because you do not want to sign up for an objective that you cannot achieve. And so it's important to get a sense of where you sit in the organization, right? If you're in charge of a business unit, if you're in charge of a program or an entire product, the goals of that business unit, program, or product, right, can be your objective, right? But if you're only in charge of one slice of the customer journey, then your objective should reflect the goals of that part only. So let's for example, say that you're on the authentication team, right? The authentication team is going to sign up for an objective, right? A goal that is focused on the authentication process of the system. You're not going to sign up for a goal for the entire product, right? We're going to talk about creating the most seamless authentication service, process in the online gaming world, whatever it is, right? But we're looking for that part of the world that you control and that you can influence. You don't want to set goals outside of your sphere of influence because you can't hit those goals because they're outside of your sphere of influence. So that's our objective. Now let's talk about key results, okay? Here are the descriptors for good key results, right? Key results are our measurable milestones. So in contrast to our objectives, we do have metrics here, right? These are metrics. These are quantifiable metrics. Ideally, they're ratios or rates to give us a sense of how we're trending, right? 25% more of this, 30% less of that. They should be aggressive. We should set good targets for ourselves. They should be verifiable with evidence. I should be able to look at data and analytics and reporting and market research and customer research to verify your key results. And most importantly, and it's so important that I put a red line underneath it. That's how important it is. Your key results must be outcomes. This is the pivot point for all of this. And if you've read John Doerr, if you've read Measure What Matters, he is nowhere near as definitive about this as we are in this. In my very, very strong opinion, OKRs make a difference. They change things for the better when your key results are outcomes, when they're measures of human behavior, right? One more time. What's missing from this list? What's not on this list? Exactly. The how. One more time. It was not in the objective and it's not in the key results. The goal is not to deliver a thing. The goal is to change human behavior in a positive and meaningful way for those humans. And to do that, we actually have to decide which humans, right? So if everyone has a customer, whose behavior do we want to change? And it could be your current customers or prospective customers, users of our product, third-party vendors, leadership teams, designers, engineers, right? Product managers, could be anybody. And then we ask the question, right? If we solve the problem and achieve the objective, what will those people be doing differently? How will their behavior change? Right? And so for my online learning platform for lawyers, 50% decrease in the number of existing customers leaving the service due to its user experience. And you know what comes up in a well-written key result statement? I'm going to sound like a broken record, but there it is again. Who does what by how much? You know you've written an outcome-based goal, an outcome-based key result, when you can identify these three components in that key result. Who does what by how much? It's absolutely critical. Let me show you a couple of examples of some good OKRs. Here's uh, uh, kind of completing this online learning platform for lawyers, right? So we want to build an engaging continuing education product for the entirety of a lawyer's career by the end of the year. Each user, how do we know? Each user will take at least 3 courses each year. That's a 300% increase. 25% of new customers will come from word of mouth, and each law firm that signs up registers at least 50% of its staff. These are the 3 behaviors that tell me that I've decided, that tell me that I've built an engaging product for the entirety of a lawyer's career. And that's an interesting conversation that you can have to decide if that's actually true or not. But for me, that's what makes sense. Let me show you an example from the real world. And I like this example because it comes from healthcare, right? And I really like this example. This is from the Cleveland Clinic. The Cleveland Clinic is a global healthcare organization. It's huge, in fact, but it's based in Cleveland, Ohio, right? Not surprising, I suppose, by the name. And they've been using OKRs forever, and they put them out publicly so you can see them every year. These are grabbed from their website. And I like a couple of these on here, especially, and I've highlighted them for you. So this is the CEO's OKRs, right? So the objective is best place to receive care anywhere. Qualitative, inspirational, heck yeah, right? Aspirational, right? Action oriented, clear value, and time boxed. It's got to be done by the end of the year. Ticks all the boxes. How do we know? Well, we want to reduce the absolute number of safety events. So they've got an absolute number in there as well. And we want to reduce the rate of serious safety events. That tells us that we're becoming the best place to receive care anywhere. The other one I really like here is this one. It's an internally facing one. It says best place to work in healthcare. Qualitative, aspirational, inspirational, action oriented, clear value, time boxed. How do we know? Because people would recommend it. A high percentage of people would recommend it as a place to work. And the number of folks quitting who we don't want to quit, who are voluntarily quitting, is dropping, right? That's how we know that we're building the best place to work in healthcare, right? So I really like this as a really nice example from the outside world. Again, who does what by how much is featured in all of these. Now, to kind of bring this home, and I want to leave as much time as I can for Q&A, and I see questions coming in the chat, and I'm not going to take them until I'm done talking. So I want to talk about common OKR questions, and most importantly, why? Right? Why? I mean, look, we've got infinite number of goal setting frameworks. Why do we need another one? That's a fair question, right? And this one is a tough one. It's tough to implement it. It's tough to implement it successfully, as we've all seen, right? These are my top 3 benefits of OKRs, right? These are not scientifically proven. This is what I believe. I believe that these are the top 3 benefits of objectives and key results. So let's talk about that. Number 1, remember, no features, no output in the objective, no features, no output in the key results. What do we build? How do we know what to build? Right? If you use OKRs the way that I've been describing them here, where your key results are outcomes, then we are explicitly demanding that our teams do discovery work, right? Because they need to go learn and discover the best combination of code, copy, and design that is most likely to influence or to impact customer behavior in a positive way, in the way that we'd like them to do that. So we want folks out there experimenting, learning, right, inspecting and adapting, sensing and responding, all of those things. So we're explicitly demanding that teams do discovery work. In doing so, we get to know our customers better. We are building a customer-centric culture, which means we have greater empathy for our customers, which means our customers feature in our conversations and in our decision making much more prevalently than in organizations who don't do discovery work. And that is extremely valuable because we're always thinking about this from the position of the customer. And then finally, We are increasing the agility of our organizations. Why? Right? Because we're going to make an assumption, a guess. Assumption is a fancy word for guess. Remember, we're always guessing, right? An assumption about a combination of code, copy, and design that's going to move customer behavior in a positive direction. Terrific, right? Um, as we start to do discovery work, as we start to deploy that out into the world, we start to collect evidence. We get evidence back from the market. And if the evidence says that we have not changed behavior in a positive way, or we're not moving the needle in the right direction, we now have the evidence to justify changing course. And changing course based on evidence is agile. It's being agile. It is organizational agility. And so by managing to outcomes, by setting goals with OKRs that are based in outcomes, we are creating the opportunity for more and more of our teams to make evidence-based decisions and to pivot based on that evidence towards better solutions and to react to changing market conditions more quickly. And so we're building that agility muscle into the organization. Now, to be super clear, I want to make two more quick points and I'll wrap this up. When I talk about discovery work, I'm talking about design, I'm talking about research, I'm talking about experiments, I'm talking about going out into the real world and understanding if there are unmet needs in a specific situation, about observing our customers by seeing what they're doing, and then ultimately engaging with our customers to understand why they might be doing these particular things. And are there ways for us to help them be more successful in the future? Like we could help these gentlemen in the future, assuming they survive this photo shoot, which there's no way to tell if they actually did or not. But that's what I'm talking about when I say discovery work. And I love this example from Rotterdam. Rotterdam is a city like the rest of the Netherlands where everybody rides bicycles, right? And one of the assumptions that the city tries to make on a regular basis is where do we put the bicycle parking, the bicycle racks, as we call them in America? Because committing to a bicycle rack is cement, it's concrete and steel, and it's hard to get it out of there, right? The city of Rotterdam has a mobile bicycle rack. It's the size of one parking space. They put it on a street corner somewhere, and then they observe. Do people use it? Do they use it again? Do they use it frequently? How many people use it, right? Does that happen consistently over time? And if they reach a certain threshold, they make that bicycle parking spot permanent. And if they don't, they move it somewhere else in the city, right? The idea is that the measure of success is not we built a bicycle parking rack, right? We built one that people actually used is the measure of success. Okay. Last thing I want to talk about here is this. Is what makes this hard. And there's a lot of stuff that makes this hard. I'll talk about this very, very quickly, and then we'll do Q&A for as long as we can. So there's 4 traps I'm going to talk about very, very fast. The first is this idea that you have to push your OKRs down from the top, and everybody's got to do what got to have the same goals that are pushed down from the top. The reality is that this needs to be a top-down and a bottom-up process. So our leadership is going to start to set our strategic goals for the organization, and then our teams are going to come bottom up and they're going to say, well, tactically, this is what we can control that functions as a leading indicator of the strategic goal. And ideally, we meet in the middle and we discuss and we negotiate, right? But the idea is that setting successful OKRs is both a top-down and a bottom-up process. I've beat on this one to death, and I'm going to do it one more time, right? If we set our key results as output, we lose all the benefits of this. We're essentially right back to waterfall, right? Because if your key result is ship the mobile app by Friday, we're at fixed scope, fixed time projects once again, and we've just rebranded our goals as something new and we've changed nothing, right? Your key result must be an outcome. I mentioned this briefly towards the end, is that we are explicitly demanding that our teams do discovery work and make decisions based on that discovery work. What's interesting is that a lot of organizations don't know how to do that. And so we have to make sure that our development teams, our product development teams, know how to do discovery work. And those teams that already know how to do discovery work are actually allowed to do it. And I find that a lot in my clients, is that folks really do want to talk to customers, and there's always obstacles. There's always issues in getting experiments out the doors and interviews and prototypes, et cetera. But this is a key facet. It's a key part of successfully implementing OKRs. The last thing I'll say about the traps, at least for now, is that is about incentives. And this is really kind of an organizational issue, comes down from the top, is that companies are used to incentivizing delivery because it's binary, right? Did you ship the thing? There it is. You shipped it. Terrific. Did anybody use the thing? I don't know. It's not what you asked me to do, right? You asked me to build it. There it is, right? For OKRs to work, we have to start moving our incentives and our performance management criteria away from strictly delivering stuff and focusing more and more on learning, customer centricity, and evidence-based decision making. And that's what will get folks to work in new ways and take on these new goals more readily. Because even if you set a beautiful OKR, beautifully written, the right OKR with the beautiful outcome in there, if the incentive for me is to build the thing, right, I get paid, promoted, rewarded, et cetera, bonused if I build the thing, I'm going to build the thing, right? Even if it's not the right thing to build, because that's what gets me paid. Bottom line is this. Look, OKRs are hard. It's a simple idea. It's difficult to implement. They're supposed to be. It's a goal-setting tool. It's meant to align an entire organization to give it a sense of what's important right now, what's the priority, and to put the customer front and center. And so while the concept might be simple, the implementation is difficult, and that's fine. That's by design, because we are shifting an entire culture towards working toward a different type of goal and in a different way of working. And so with that, I want to say thank you very much for listening. I'm more than happy to take all of your questions now. And I will just say one thing is that our book comes out in a couple months. If you want to sign up for the waiting list, our new website just launched at okr-book.com. And I'd be happy if you signed up for our mailing list there.